good afternoon, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. Welcome to the Coach's Corner. And, of course, we got Coach Bono back from Cancun. How's it going, man?
I'm finally rehydrated from a week out there. We had a good trip. Sorry we missed each other last week. We talked about trying to make it work, but yeah, I just didn't trust that Wi-Fi signal at the resort we were staying at. But
no, our test run, there was no way that was going to work.
No doubt. But it's great to be back, and I'm really excited about this week's guest.
Absolutely.
This is a guy that I've only recently got to know, really through work. But I've had a chance to watch him work with players firsthand. Had some really great conversations with him. He does a phenomenal job at what he does. His name is Dan Lundy. Dan is the, CEO, owner, operator of Fourth Down University. So he does a lot of training with specialists, kickers, and punters. And I'm excited to have him on our show today and introduce him and let us get to know him and what he's up to.
Absolutely. Welcome in, Dan.
How you doing?
Excellent.
Good to see you, man.
It's an honor and a privilege, to be on. I met Coach Bono recently through a guy I look up to in Shane Graham. He's a peer now. We coach kickers and punters and snappers, and hopefully we consult teams. I think they buy into what we're saying because it's so important. It's often the difference. I'm honored to talk my passion, and especially with you guys.
Yeah, so for the people tuning in, give us some of your background. How it is you started kicking?
Sebastian Janikowski was really the catalyst. I played soccer with him. He was a senior when I was a freshman. My dad was our coach, and just a long story short, someone had the novel idea to take the biggest leg on a soccer field and see how it translated at Seabreeze High School. And 3 weeks after the initial touch of a football, Bobby Bowden's there. And the rest is history. He motivated me. I saw obviously my uphill. My climb was a little more uphill, right? I had 3 years of development and training, but I took full advantage of the summers that he would come home because he dated a girl in town still that they were high school sweethearts. So there was a lot of motivation there. So that's how I got into it. I played at Miami. He was a Seminole, I was a Hurricane, so there was fun in that too. I was hurt a lot. I played right away at Miami, and I was really plagued with injury in the adductor, and it was overuse. I learned later in life that it was the things I did too much, and it really dictates my coaching now. We have pitch counts or kick counts, if you will. So yeah, I'm a nerd, and I think Coach Bono saw that there was another fellow nerd in a different capacity. I don't coach scheme like him. I do have a fondness in learning the game, but I stay in my lane in most capacities.
Now, your dad was a pretty prominent soccer player himself. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. He moved here from England at 13, and he didn't know the culture, the difference, and especially in South Carolina where he moved to a base in Charleston. And long story short, he got to be so good and earn a reputation that Charleston Southern would let him train with their college team, and he was 8th, 9th grade. So he didn't really play high school with the high school, and that created a lot of marketability, right? A lot of coaches would be like, who is this young guy you let on your field? And so my dad played at a high level, and that was the expectation, is that I was going to do the same. But I think Sebastian changed even my dad's mind that the opportunity in this country is in American football. And I think it's great because I think that kids now have an outlet, and they don't need to kick footballs at 6 years old. I think actually some of the best ones I've ever met started later, because they had that innate ability to strike a ball, the eye to foot, the body control, the exceptional athleticism somewhere else. I think people don't give enough credit. I think Coach Bono knows and can attest. These are highly skilled athletes. These are often exceptional golfers, really good pool players, can shoot a basketball exceptionally well. Not always, but they're athletes. They're just not the same as what you see on Sunday around them, right? So it's very hard to compare.
Yeah,
that's right. Those people too, right?
Yeah, well, those the kickers and punters, I think athletically have, there's they're freaks, you know, especially now in this, and you know, it, that's changed so much in the NFL from like 1999 when I first got into to now. You know, I mean the athleticism, the size, the strength. You know, the punters. You know, it's probably easier to measure them, but you know their ability to hang the football and place the football.
Yeah.
It's it's night and day. I mean, not to say that they weren't highly skilled back then, but it's really ascended to another level. So Dan, you kind of go through this progression from soccer to playing football. You have your career at Miami. What was it? What made you want to pursue coaching as a career?
It was reluctant at first. So we had a guy that trained us on Tuesdays back then. His name was Mike McCabe. He had a cup of tea at the Bears, but he was an exceptionally good punter in college, All-American. He was actually Urban Meyer's first All-American. I love that story. He tells it often, but he really was the only thing that we had in terms of a reference. Like if we were not doing what we wanted to do in practice, the only feedback I got from Chuck Pagano was, if you do it again, you get demoted, right? And he was honest with me. You know, he was very blunt, and I love the feedback, but I wanted some more, like, well, what am I doing wrong and how do I fix it? And this guy was the first person in my life really that was able to provide that, some nuance, like an opinion that it almost always helped in some capacity, and at least led me to thinking about the problem better. So when I was hurt and I didn't play anymore, he bugged me. He's like, you need to coach. I think you could do this. And I did it finally. And yeah, like I stuck with it. I never really stopped after that first Sunday at American Heritage High School when I was like a junior in college. I didn't want to be there on a Sunday, especially early. I had just left South Beach. I was tired. I kind of felt like you probably did it after leaving Mexico last week. I didn't want to be on a football field in South Florida, but I swear that's why I immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah, you know, you bring up a great point because so many programs, I would say the overwhelming majority of programs really from the smallest level, you know, from junior high all the way up, you know, till probably you get to the NFL. You know, most places don't have they have a special teams coach, but doesn't mean that person is necessarily, you know, skilled in coaching the specialists. And in high school, a lot of times it's like, you know, you guys just go over on that field and come on over when we're ready for you. It happens that way in college a lot more than, you know, people would think or want to admit. So it's important for a specialist, a developing specialist, or even an established specialist to have that personal coach. In fact, all my years at the combine, I wasn't the only one to do this. I mean, that's one of the first questions I would always ask. Who's your swing coach? You know, who do you work with? Who is it that you go to help, you know, problem solve and you know, how do you self-correct? It's probably the only position group that's really, you know, I would say undercoached at the, you know, high school, college level.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think that's, you know, my why. Like, why do I think that or what do I stress, and how do I differentiate myself in a marketplace where there's a lot of us that realize this, that we have an opportunity here, although we're not included in the 10-man or 11-man staff, like field staff in college, and we're overlooked everywhere else as well. We have an opportunity in the off season, I think, to build a rapport with coaches and players, right? I do it every day. I try and earn my trust through the content I provide, how specific it is, what the focal point is, because what you said, Coach, is so true. Is my high school kids are good because of one thing. How do they manage their time when no one's looking? You know, we can get lost in a lot of repetition of doing the wrong thing, as you guys know. It's not a matter of the volume. It's a matter of the quality of what you're doing. And I think that we have to constantly remind these 15-year-olds, especially, but that's what it takes, you know, to be meticulous, to be repeatable, to do it once, maybe twice a game and have to be perfect. I think you have to be buttoned up. I think you have to know when to warm up, when to shut it down, and how to train, So that really is on us.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that even at semi-pro could really utilize, because having played on some of those teams, special teams is one that gets left out all the time, right?
Sure.
And it showed, right? You'd get into those moments and you're standing on the sideline and you're just hoping. You're just like, man, I hope they make the kick, because so yeah, no, unfortunately, outside of really the pro level, it's probably an undercoached thing overall.
And even in the NFL, I mean, it's like, man, you have a guy. It's his livelihood. I'm not trying to change somebody's swing. By the time they get to that level, I mean, they're pros. They should have the ability to, self-correct. And my philosophy was, I'm not going to try. I can't teach this guy to. I mean, they know how to punt. They know how to kick. They know how to snap by the time they get there. My philosophy was always, I'm an extra set of eyes. I want to be an expert on this. I want to be an expert on Johnny Hecker's technique. What's it look like? What's it look like when he is in his groove? And then, through film study, watching film with him, let him coach me so that I can give him feedback when it's live situations, and whether it's a practice session or during a game. That's, but your time for refinement isn't in training camp when you're getting ready for the season. That's not the time that you're trying to alter somebody's technique, because invariably they get worse before they get better. And, if they get worse, they could get cut, and that's not a good thing.
I have always found that interesting when you see a guy that makes it to the pro level and then they want to change the mechanics at that point.
It's hard.
I mean, that is a weird time to try and change someone's mechanics.
The one thing I will say with that I love to see, if there is a change, if they're doing less things, because that's really what I do with like guys at that level on Sundays. It's never about giving them more things to be good at or great at. It's, why don't we extract the things that aren't needed? What's excessive? Is there anything? There's almost always a few things that are like a little bit excessive. Or why do I do that differently sometimes here? And then where is that? Like, where is there a trend? And it's oftentimes on a certain hash. There's an acute sidestep, right? So I think a lot of this is stuff that isn't rocket science, but I think it's never really been focused on enough. I really.
That kind of leads into the next question.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. As we talk about technique and, of course, overuse, like you mentioned before, what's your coaching style?
Too rigid. I can tell you I can tell you all the things it is that can be, a turnoff to players, but I have high expectations. I'm brutally honest. I don't like kids to stick around a long time if I don't see change. Like, I was a teacher for 12 years and I got really good at seeing if a kid was doing his homework at all. And I knew the kids that were high performers that didn't need it, I didn't bug them. God bless them. But the ones that were in the middle that didn't do the extra to stay afloat, I was really hard on them because I knew they had a chance. So I don't retain everyone. I don't appease everyone. And I think that's okay. Because my expectation is that these kids, again, I think what Bono said was best. The expectation is that I do such a good job with your son or daughter that they're able to self-correct in adversity, in adverse times when things are not going well and they're by themselves. Because guess what? I think that it's going to happen. It's inevitable. We're going to be by ourselves and on our own, and we're going to be expected to do what the right thing is to do, So I'm not a fun coach, as you can tell. But it's okay because my kids love me. That there is a love, there is a rapport built off the field, and eventually, if they're doing the right thing, I don't have as much to say. When I get Cairo Santos on a field, I see him in a week or two. There's hardly anything technical we talk about other than maybe like a glitch or a tempo issue. Like, hey, why don't you try to attack that last step? it's so subtle by that point. We can enjoy all the hard work we've spent, when things weren't so easy.
I mean, I feel like that is part of coaching though, because there's not a coach I had that we were friends when I was still playing. Now afterwards, right? Go grab beers and whatever, still talk to a few of them. Relationship wildly different. But while you were playing, it's tough to like the guy that's going to grab your face mask and beat you on the head with a whistle. What are you doing?
We don't do that anymore, Bo.
I know. They yell at you if you do stuff like that now. But I mean, but the premise is the same, right? Is if you're coaching them hard, the odds are they're not going to be your best friend, right?
Yep.
At least in the moment. After the fact, after they look back on it and be like, oh no, that really propelled me to where it is I needed to go. But yeah, in the moment, it's not like you're going to be best friends. You're like, man, that guy yells at me all the time.
Yeah. I admire the coaches that have that balance. I think that's something that I could definitely work on. It's not the kicking and the technical stuff and the drills and when to use them and film analysis. I got to get better, and having kids has helped. I've got a 7, a 5, and a 2-year-old. It's helped a lot with my patience, but when I'm out there and, you guys can relate when you're out there and you're turned on, it's hard to, I don't know, monitor it in the moment, so I tend to get a little feisty when things are going like, I don't know. I just feel like if we're going to be out here, let's make the most of it,
Well, my philosophy, and again, this show's about Dan, but I'll throw this in here for everybody that's listening. But my philosophy, which I learned from the late Frank Gann Sr., and I adopted it, was we attack the problem, not the person. It's never personal. I'm gonna tell you, if you're falling short, I will call you out if it's warranted because of if you're hurting the team by not being where or doing what you're supposed to be doing. But I'd rather put you on stage, for what you're doing well. So, I think when you attack the problem, not the person, you're giving a level of respect that you expect in return. So, and again, it's I've never believed in berating the player or putting name calling or anything like that. I mean, that's not the way I was coached. That's not something that I would respond to. But again, you attack the problem, not the person.
Totally agree. And I think that's where, it can be gray sometimes, that especially if I'm isolating a particular kid and I'm commenting to him more, I think kids take those things personally when like Don Solinger once told me, he's like, when I stop talking and correcting you is when I stop trying and caring about you, and that made me feel really good because I was having a hard day that day. I'm like, why would this guy never lets me go? He never lets me go. But now looking back, I'm like, he likes me, because if he didn't, he would have ignored me, and that made me feel good.
Well, so what is it about coaching that gives you the greatest or the most satisfaction?
Whew. I don't even know. I guess if I had to put it into words, I get a sense. I don't know. I get a sense of satisfaction, and I get a sense of this is where I want to be and should be, and I can't get enough of it. And when I get to do like stuff where I'm stuck on I-4 with you, and we're going to a camp to support 2 boys that we kind of know through mutual passions, like football has brought me so many things, and like I feel like it's challenging at times, and it's cyclical. Sometimes it seems like, man, is this the right direction? Should I? But it always brings me back to the same place. It's like I get to eventually be on a field with some amazing human beings, so it's awesome. I love how it makes me feel.
Very cool.
I mean, so I guess as you moved into having your own business, did you have reservations making that jump? And then like, how has it evolved as you've gone?
I spent 17 years with a company that did the same thing more or less. And so that made it really hard. And when I finally thought, I can do this a little differently and independently, I did it right before COVID, so that wasn't easy. Um, so it's been wild because I really was getting an indication that this was not the right decision in so many ways. And then having a family, I had a 1-year-old when all this was going on at first. So again, football saved me, and it saved me so many times in my life. Like it's kept me on course, I don't know. And yeah, it's been extremely difficult. It's been nothing but a huge learning curve. And I always feel like I'm a few steps behind, but it's neat because I just kind of like football. I learn that's okay as long as you don't stop. Right. Um,
I mean, that's true. Owning any business is you get as much information as you can. You start, you're not ready. And then as you get in, you're like, wow, those questions would have been cool to know to ask.
Well, Bo, you're going through the similar thing, right? I mean, this is you're not necessarily a rookie, but I mean,
Yeah.
this is you're kind of following your passion and what
Yeah.
you're doing with. This isn't the only show that you do. I mean, you're doing shows all week long. I mean,
Yeah.
you must have had some of those reservations at first, or at least you're. The big thing is you got to answer
Yeah.
when your wife says, "Well, how much money are we going to make at this?"
yeah.
Like that's you got to pay the mortgage and the car payment and insurance and all those
Exactly.
things, and
Especially
gotta
after
be scary.
having owned multiple businesses that were successful, that I then closed to do something that, is wildly different to start, right? Because when you start a traditional business, you have a product or service, you can survive on cash flow to some degree, right? Because you have some turnover there. When it comes to the media end, you don't have a marketable product until you've achieved some sort of success to start. So you have to build your platforms and your viewers and all of that before you can even try and make money at it. So it's just this wicked loss for a long time. So it's very different than any business I've started before. But at the same time, I've owned other businesses, and so I understand that jumping in, it's going to be a grind, no matter what it is.
And what's good, and I think what's motivating, we all can relate, is in any industry like we're in, a good sign of your success short term is when your competitors start taking you seriously.
Absolutely.
Like I used to, when I first did all this, I felt like, wow, I lost so many friends, or I'm losing so many, or I'm gaining so many enemies. And then I'm like, someone said one day, they're like, who are these enemies? I'm like, oh, well, they're other kicking camps. Well, it's business, So again, I mean, I take things very personally because it's not where I'm looking. I'm not looking to threaten people like that, but I think that's cool, But these are all the things I would have liked to have known beforehand, because I went through a phase where I was like, did my personality change? No, you start a business, and I didn't even think about that,
So what makes you different? What makes fourth down you? What makes you different from the multitudes that are out there trying do the same thing that you are? Because I mean, I'm not going to say there's not a shortage, but there's a lot of guys that are trying to be swing coaches. What makes you different?
I think my curiosity, if I had to say it in a couple words, but to explain that is, I'm fascinated how there are so many parallels and so many things within football, like in a receiver stance and start, right? There's, in my opinion, it's very similar to a field goal stance and start. There's a couple pivots here and bring the base in a little bit, but I'm visualizing it now. And I learned from linebacker play. I learned from running back coaches, like all these things in terms of weight distribution and stance. And I think that it's fascinating to see. I can now connect with a receiver coach who I can get on Zoom and I can talk about kicking, and I can actually relate through learning, right? These are things that I had to learn. I had to be on the other end. I like to listen, I'm actually a horrible listener, but if you're talking about football, all of a sudden, all my problems, my attention deficit issues, they're just gone. Back to where I want to be, right? So I think it's simply put, this is where I want to be. I'm the most curious. I don't have as much of an ego as I used to, which I think makes me a lot more a lot more readily available to grow in terms of my knowledge. And I used to kind of think I'm here. I got it. I got this whole thing figured out. But they're just, I think the more you know, the more you realize you don't really know, right?
Absolutely. That is probably one of the most common things from somebody that starts a business is they're like, yeah, I think I really have my stuff figured out. And then you start a business, you're like, wow, I really know very little.
Mhm. That's how you stay alive, though, right?
Absolutely.
You stay humble.
So, I mean, I guess kind of blending those two topics together, you said that you had been doing this for another company for a long time and that you created enemies jumping out on your own. Has that kind of mended itself to some degree?
Yeah.
And then, of course, as you're doing a little bit different technique, so to speak, from what it is you were doing in your own coaching style, is it something where you're able to work together with the company that you used to be at?
It's a great question. I was just on the phone today with a guy in South Georgia he's a principal, but he's still loosely connected to the organization, doing kicking stuff. And we've never really lost touch through all this. He's one of the few, but there's been a number of dudes like in the Texas location in New York and the West Coast. Like we were everywhere. We were in about 21 states when I left. Most just disengaged, and that's fine. That's what they were told to do. But since, yeah, it's been awesome because like I said, I remained consistent. I stayed in my lane. I never, ever, ever, ever brought up people's names or responded to anything like that. And I think that's important. I think that people can smell you, that kind of stuff, right? Because it just, there's no place for it. I don't even have time for that. If we have time to talk about that, we don't have time to talk about football, and that's what we're talking about, So it's been a struggle internally, but my wife's been supportive and reminding me all along the way to stay in your lane. Like she would don't respond to that, whether it's a text or an email. So, and that's business too, right? These are things I would have loved to have these chapters in a book that said, here's all the things that you're probably not going to start the business now because of. Boom, late night text, right? Like, anyway, but
that's an interesting part of that is it's good that there's a lot of things that you don't know going in because you would end up with the paralysis by analysis, right? You'd be looking at all of the negative features that come with starting, and it would probably keep you from actually getting out and doing it. So sometimes ignorance is bliss as you're starting out. You jump in and you're like, oh man, that's good to know. But had I known, I might have slowed my path down. So, I mean, it's probably good that you didn't have all the answers going.
I wouldn't have done it. No, I'm too conservative, I think looking back, I wouldn't have probably done it, just to be honest. Like I probably would have stayed comfortable and who knows, because it was just the wrong time having kids and doing all that. But man, now that I'm through it, I'm forever grateful that I'm independent, and like I get to work with Bono and special people like that. Like, I don't think you understand like how special it is. Like, yes, being on here is cool, but just the time I get to spend with guys that have been at that level that I get to connect with, I get to learn from. I'm going to nerd out for a sec, but I referenced something Bono taught me in Tampa, where the wrist, I know this is probably people that aren't watching, but he essentially was talking about the evenness of the wrist when we're possessing a punt, and how oftentimes what kids see is uneven hands, right? Which causes like essentially an unevenness. And we always stress, keep the ball on the quad, keep the ball on the foot. Like it's a linear movement. And that was an eye opener because I don't think a lot of people, if any, I've ever heard say that. And I was like, wow, that was a cool takeaway. And that was the one thing he said all day. He kind of just observed. And I was just like, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not going to forget that. That was cool.
I mean, I would say break that down for the people watching so they understand what you're talking about.
So break it down even more. Essentially, like a right-footed punter has a tendency to drop inside, right? But they overcompensate that by a guide hand, if you will, a left hand, right? Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So he's possessing like the opposite extremities of the football, the opposite corners, if you will. But he was saying bring that plant side arm back, retract the plant side arm back to where it's more even with the right wrist. So now the left and right wrists are even. They're not uneven, because that has negative effects on shoulders, torso, directioning of our hips. It really does invite more of, I guess, in short, it invites more of a linear process, which we're trying to do, you know?
Yeah, because we want to keep the ball out over the kicking leg. And so when this hand is the off hand, is up on the front of the ball,
it brings it
naturally going to pull it more into the center of my body, where my whole point was try to get this hand on the back half of the ball so that we can, more push that over our kicking leg. So just
yeah, I mean, it makes sense because it squares the body.
I'm glad you like that, Dan.
Dude. I don't know if like is the correct term, but yes, fond of that for sure. No, it's things of that nature though and that's probably seems very fundamental, especially if someone that's never thought about punting, and then that was my aha moment. Yep. Because I could show you a billion other things with action and reaction and distribution and loading on steps that can mess us up. It's a little more like technical, but I don't know. I think what people are most receptive to is the easiest way to hear the information. And that's where, again, I have to get better, because some of these things are complex. Like if you need to explain the why to someone, explaining it well without being too much, it's very difficult, right? So that's where I am in my stage now, is how can I be more succinct to the point, but making sure that I got everything I needed to say before we go on to the next thought. And that's another thing, Bono, I'd love your advice on how many things can you really introduce in a day as a coach to an athlete? Is it one? Is it two? Is it good luck with getting one done well? Like, I love hearing people's feedback on that.
That's the hard part about what you do, especially when it's a large group like we had in Tampa, and the skill level was from not very to vary, and
Sure.
and everything in between. And so it's I've always believed that less is more, but at the same time, it's like I also believe that it's not what we know, it's what we can teach the player. And something, kicking and punting, snapping, they're very, very technical. I mean, very, very technical skills. I mean, you're talking about something that happens in a fraction of a seconds. Like a field goal is going to take less than 1.3 seconds from the snap to when the ball hits when it hits the kicker's foot. A punt is going to happen in 2 seconds from snap to catch to drop to punt. So it happens very, very fast, and there's a lot of things that take place. So just watching Dan and the way he has his drill progressions and how he's working on specific skills and breaking it down for the athlete, it's but again, when you're in a large setting like that, it's difficult to coach every single kid. It really it's hard. I don't know how you do it, honestly. I
don't do a lot of those. For that reason, because that's not coaching, as you saw. That was like spitting out a point and seeing if anyone wants to try it. Okay, that's not. That's not. I agree with you. That's not necessarily what I like. The small group setting or private. It's a slower process. I don't do stars. I don't give rankings. I essentially take my TrackMan, which I have over there, and I track the heck out of these kids with data, and film. And I use that data, there's several reasons for the data. It's to show Coach Bono definitively, objectively, that this kid's hitting a 4.2 on 6 reps.
Right. And this was supposed to be Bo's question, but
no. It's perfect that it's just segues into it.
Educate us on what the TrackMan is, and then, kind of how you use it, because I know what it is. I don't think Bo does. And certainly probably anybody that's watching the show, that we might have one person, but just talk about that for a while.
I was going to say, because I think I've actually seen a version of it that is to help train in golf.
So that's where its inception. They're a Danish company. They were in the major league. They're in the Major League Baseball now. I think they initiated with PGA Tour, but when they started tracking that ball on whatever network that was them. And they've since grown to football, and they weirdly enough picked us first, right? And kickers and punters. Snapping hopefully is the next phase to that, and I think quarterback play is in the works, because pitching is the component for baseball that's most used. But golf, it's phenomenal. What it is, it's a Doppler technology, and it essentially, I can't speak for baseball and the other, but in football, kicking, for example, it gives me 12 metrics. It gives me ball speed, height at line of scrimmage, end over end rotation, movement sideways, like lateral movement where it starts, all sorts of stuff. Launch angle is really good for punting. I can tell when the kid dispossesses, when the contact's made. That directly affects everything. Where you're punting the ball off the floor directly affects distance and hang. And we're learning that, like, exactly what angle for a kid in terms of, as a 6'4" kid, his launch angle, if it's in the 50s to 60s, he's special. That's a 5'4" kid. We're connecting dots that we've never connected before, because it's always been a stopwatch. If you're lucky, if you got a coach that cares enough, he's always got a stopwatch on you. But what we're learning is sometimes it's up to 2-3 tenths of a second off in terms of when the ball falls at a distance, and we're trying to get it as it falls. Our eyes aren't working quite as well as technology does. So my kids don't get 5.4s unless they get a 5.4. This is used in the NFL Combine that Bono, I think, was at. This is what was used to evaluate the specialists this year. So it's a wonderful tool. I think that it's not something you just go and buy and you automatically become like a better coach or a player by any means. But I think that if you're someone who
definitely hasn't helped my golf game.
Sure. That was when I was the most let down about it. I was like, when I purchased mine, I was like, does this do the golf too? And they're like, no. That's a whole nother ball away. I'm like, dang, I thought I was getting a 2-for-1 here. Like, just flip the switch to golf and I was done with the lesson. But it's wild. Like it's something that's more of a visual thing.
It's really, really cool. I mean, I was blown away by it. I mean,
I can tell when a kid is fatiguing with the ball speed. I can tell where his plant foot is in relation to the spot with certain metrics on. So I'm learning, and that back to the curiosity, right? Like, I feel like if you ask me this in 2 or 3 years, I'm not using it quite well enough, but it's pretty incredible that my kids get to play with this, because it's state-of-the-art stuff.
I mean, that is where I would have nerded out, is watching the metrics that it gives you and then trying to see where it is I average out. But I like that knowledge. So playing wise, I was a corner. So I liked asking questions in my back pedal, where do I shift my weight so that I can break easier? I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to use somebody's wheel that works. Right. So let me know how to shift my weight down so that I can break on the ball, have a shot at breaking the play up rather than just tackling the guy. Right. And perfect. I would imagine in kicking, I was not a great kicker, so it's not something I ever had to do. But I would imagine it'd be very similar, especially with something like this where it tracks exactly where you make contact. I think consistency would come huge out of that if you're really watching it.
Fascinating example. Last July, Cairo was at New Smyrna Beach with me, and we were tracking him. It was like my guinea pig session. They're like, bring a good kicker. I'm like, will you do this? He's like, yeah. He's like, I want to be tracked. Bono, you'll love this. Cairo last season, 2 seasons ago, outside 50, he swung a little. I don't want to get nerdy, but he kind of gave a little more, right? He gave a little more and like kept the ball a little lower just to ensure that we were getting the points. We were in a crosswind in New Smyrna this day in July, and it was like 15 to 20. It was no joke, just left to right. And he was at 50, and he stroked it, right, really well. And they're like, good from 58. He turned around, he goes, what did you just say? They're like, good from 58. He's like, they're like, you just made like a few other balls that look like that. He's like, no, you don't understand. I don't need to. So hold on, and he's like thinking in his head, he's like, I don't need to change my swing until when? And they went and he looked at the screen, and they're saying, here's your average good from. And he's like, I'm not going to change my swing at 50 anymore. And that's a big deal if you think about
Sure
it,
it is.
right? He had the mindset now 53, 54 was the threshold in which he kicked significantly less balls from there. So I think that alone for him, even though the good from is the kids love that. Oh, that was good from 61. You know, what I try and remind them is, then why do you swing different from 50? Right? These are the things that we can now objectively have conversations. It's not my opinion.
Right.
You know, this is what the data says, but I don't know if the kids are quite there yet because I'm not quite there yet, you know?
Right. Well, you can make evidence-based decisions.
Yes.
That's always good.
Yes. I mean, that's what my science teacher used to tell me, right? But
Well, that's the thing that's brought a lot of science. I mean, look, your logo, your initial logo was kickonometry, right? Am I right on it? So there's a science to all of this. I mean, there's a lot more science than people recognize. I mean, just how the body moves. How do you generate power? All of those things come into play. But yeah, the TrackMan it's a game changer. I think any kid that can have the ability to get himself evaluated on that, it's a huge deal. It's phenomenal.
I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing. If I could add in like about this, I think the reason why I wanted to do it on my own in terms of Fourth Down University is because I really felt that I now had complete control and accountability to make sure that my clients, when they had problems, I didn't defer it to my boss or my other guy in the department or the guy in Savannah that ran that camp with me that did the bad thing. I was sick of not being held more accountable because my expectation, so I think that's the probably reason why I probably would have not done it, because it's hard, right? Nothing that's worth it is easy, and this is definitely worth it. But dang, it's hard. And if I could communicate to anyone out there that's considering it, make sure that whatever you're going into business for, and I know it's cliche, but go into it for the passion, because I think that's the only way it can really lead to money, and it probably won't. So at least you're passionate, right?
I mean, hours per or dollars per hour. It takes a long time to calculate out. That's for sure.
Amen. I mean,
it is funny though, because there are awesome parts of it, and then kind of bummer parts, and it's the same part. Because when anything awesome happens, you're like, yeah, I'm that guy. It's my fault. And anytime anything bad happens, you're like, I'm that guy.
You can't like look around, and be like, oh, yeah, I guess I sent that email, or back to my technical stuff. Like there's always issues, my website and scheduling, just stuff that, again, I want to coach football.
Right.
Sorry, I had a glitch on my website and it was a 9 a.m. start, and this is in 2 months. Like, yes, I'll change the text real quick.
Oh, yeah.
But I still want to. I feel like there's so many things that are not letting me do. I want to make sure if I grow that I'm still getting to coach football. And I totally get how people kind of resent what it is they do after a while, because everyone else is doing the stuff that they loved initially, right? I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't feel like I ever had a job for the entire time I was coaching. It's what I was passionate about. I loved it. And the late George DeLeon said to me one time, he said, Bono, you're not coaching for money. He said, you love coaching. You do it for free. The money's for your family. The money's so you can pay your bills, but the money's really so your wife can put up with the other ladies at the bus stop when they're talking shit about you on the radio. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Yes.
I love what you said, man. It's so true. Like, I'm doing really well in life, and it's just as long as my family's good, and we're good. Like, we're doing fine. I get to take them to Disney on June 28th, and that's all they want to do for their birthdays. They did it together. So count your blessings, right? I mean,
there's worse places to be than Ormond Beach, that's for sure. I mean, that's a great little town.
Shh, No one even knows what that
I
is. So you
know.
just said it.
Yeah,
You just taught like a bunch of people about my hometown. I don't want them to move here.
yeah,
There's a
right.
lot. There's a lot of people.
We got a bunch of people moving. We're only about 20 minutes apart though. And
Oh, you guys are
yeah,
super
we're like
close.
really close. Yep.
Nice.
He was in, or I don't know if you still possess that, but you were the fastest growing county in the country, right? Not too long ago.
Flagler is. I didn't
Yeah,
know is that. It does not surprise me
it
though.
was the fast in the country. This was, you can check me on that later, but I want to say 5, 6 years ago, number one.
Yeah.
That's
Not
crazy.
not surprising at all. Things have blown up here just in the 3 years that we've been here. Yeah. So for those of us that people that watching that don't know, what services do you provide with the Fourth Down U? And then what's on the horizon? What I know you got some big events coming up. You want to talk about those at all, or
I do. Private training is my favorite, my passion. Saturdays, every Saturday of the year, we do a small group Saturday, so we let a few more in. Sundays is like more of a semi-private setting where there's one or two guys. Like I told you, mostly keep it small because of like what it is that's going on. Uh, but I do like Bethune-Cookman. I'll plug that. June 23rd, I'm doing a favor for those guys. They're a Daytona Beach private school. And they're looking to sign a snapper and a kicker. They actually have a great. I went and trained them and met the guys. They're two from Australia before they left for break, and so we're trying to help Bethune-Cookman identify some specs. And then end of June, I have a special event where I have a couple guys from out of state that work for me come in to evaluate and train the kids. But yeah, I keep it on the field a lot, but the guys that are too far, I offer virtual training, which is going really well. That started in COVID, and when I started this, I was like, whoa, I came in a field now. So I moved to the virtual setting. And what I do a lot of in terms of free consultation is people like Bono. If I can get them on a Zoom, I'll teach them for free. And they're always like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, like why we love it, like why, and I give them a recording of it because what it almost always happens is there's a relationship form. Something comes around, they're like, yo, this kid cannot keep the ball and play right hash right. I'm like, oh, let me help you with that, like, and it gives me problems. I don't know all the answers, but that's really what's fun in the fall when everyone's busy in football. A lot of times I'm in the lab, I call it, I'm in here, I'm writing. I'm drawing up like potential drills. Like I'm thinking about how to incorporate things in the weight room that can translate isolated activities. So it's just fun, like I don't have time to do it all, but it's just kind of like whenever I get a chance to do something, I pick it up and start doing it, So I have no idea what direction I'm going. And I think I'm the most disorganized, organized human on the planet. I need guidance, guys, for real.
I'm gonna try to make it down to that Bethune event.
That'd be killer.
Yeah,
That'd be cool, man. We'd love to have you. But yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, I know I've probably kicked everyone's attention off by now, but it's fun talking to football guys, and we're all kind of different, I think, in terms of what we were in football, right? It's isn't that neat? Like we all could have been a part of a team at some point. You would have hated me. I'm the kicker, but it's okay.
We hate you and love you. Like
that's true. Hero
like,
or zero.
Hey, you just made that kick. You are the dude. But if you're the punter and you were the last guy and you missed the tackle, we're like, dude, you get in the way.
That's a low feeling. God, I'm glad I've done it. I've done it twice. I had to. Oh, it was awful. My first missed game winner was 15. My first year on varsity. I was sophomore. It was awful. I'll never forget that feeling. But man, motivated me. It was one I should have made too. It was just missed it. I can remember very little about my life, like vividly. I remember everything about that moment,
Sure.
And so that I think that helps too, like realizing you're going to fail. Like everyone is going to fail miserably.
Right.
I mean, most sports guys remember the failures, not the successes. Because I can go back and tell you in games plays I missed. I don't know that I could really tell you ones that I made, right? Like there's a couple of moments where I'm like, I did something kind of cool there. I kind of remember that. But the ones that I missed, I remember well.
I thought I was the only psycho. I thought that was just me. Okay, that makes me feel better. Bono, do you remember mistakes more than?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's just
bad decisions, bad calls.
Yep.
You know.
So this is human nature, huh?
I think so. I think that failure and not wanting to repeat failure is a strong motivation to improve. You know, and you. Well, and I say, like, I always believe, like, we never lose, we learn. So we never fail. We just came up short. As long as we learn from it. The tragedy is if you don't learn from it. That's the unforgivable tragedy, right?
I don't know. There's some games we lost. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. We got killed.
Yeah.
You did tell me that one time, the lose and learn. I gotta remember that because that's definitely something we've talked about before, and I like the way you say that. It's true.
Yeah. We don't lose, we learn.
Yeah. Man, hopefully this time it sticks.
Yeah, otherwise you have to learn again, and that is less fun.
That was my test.
That is awesome. Well, I mean, definitely appreciate you coming in. This has been a fun conversation. What, where can people find you?
The easiest way is fourthdownu.com. That's 4thdownu.com. And I'm on Twitter, and I try to share a lot of my content just to kind of show what we do. And that's just at fourthdownu. I'm everywhere though. Like Facebook, you can find me. My name's Dan Lundy. Instagram, but it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to find me these days. Like just Google's pretty cool. You type in a few words. It's gotten technology getting too cool, but it's nice when you talk about how resourceful you can be with the business stuff, right?
Yes. That is a huge bonus.
I don't want to get on the AI subject, but I'm a little freaked out. I'm a little freaked out by that.
It's funny. There's elements of it that you look at it from a business standpoint and you're like, okay, this could actually be a useful tool. The development's not quite there yet. And what it does is gives you more work because it gives you the illusion that it did something for you, but you spend so much time proofreading it and correcting it that you probably could have just wrote the stuff yourself. So within the program we're using right now, right? We're broadcasting with StreamYard software, and within it, there's the ability to have it create shorts for you, which on its face sounds awesome, right? Because going through and editing a video and picking stuff out, although necessary, is time consuming, and I may not be disciplined enough to do it consistently.
Sure.
So then I'm like, okay, let me use this AI feature. And what it gives you is sometimes it'll give you one that's like solid, pretty usable. And then the rest of them are like, wow, why did you break the video in that spot? And then you basically wasted all that time listening to it. And then you have to go back because now it gave you the idea like, oh, okay, it was a good spot, just not a good delivery. And now you wasted all that time to go do what it already kind of did. So
yeah, I'm a podcast guy too. Fourth Down Focus, if you want to check out Fourth Down Focus, but I do a little of my own in-house stuff, because I like to get it out right away. And what you're saying is true. It tries to auto-generate bits, and they're just a little off. I mean, it's close, but it's not what I would want. It misses Bono's first couple words of a sentence that was the most important, and then it gets all of what I said. Yeah, cool, but what did he say that you made it? You said that, so I'm with you. I really enjoyed this, guys, and thank you again, man. If I can ever help, say the word. May a kicker ever need some help.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, Dan, and I'll be seeing you soon. So,
Yeah, I appreciate you, buddy.
all right. Take care,
Absolutely.
brother. All right.
And then,
Pleasure.
of course, if you are watching on any of our YouTube channels, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. And other than that, we will see y'all next week.
Take care.
Take care.
See you.